Good morning, one and all. Sage here, and a warm welcome to 𝐿𝐴𝐚 TV live from the Sydney studios. This is the Global Markets Roundup show. Let us glance at how the global markets rounded up globally, starting from the US market. The S&P 500 reached its sixth consecutive all-time closing high on Thursday as a new quarter and the second half of the year began with upbeat economic data and a broad-based rally. The S&P 500 was up 0.52%. The Dow Jones gained 0.38%. The Nasdaq Composite rose 0.13%, and the small cap Russell 2000 ticked up 0.81%. Economists said the number of people filing for jobless benefits dropped to 364,000 in the week ended June 26th, from 415,000 in the prior week. The Labor Department said it was the sharpest pandemic-era decline since the 14th of March 2020. The continued labour market recovery signalled a rapid expansion of the economic activities in the US, raising hopes of a bumper upcoming earnings season. And moving on now to more trending market updates. Energy stocks were boosted by the news of OPEC oil cartel weighing on lifting a pandemic-era production limit to leverage the current demand and higher oil prices in rich countries. And according to people familiar with the development, Saudi Arabia and Russia have agreed to a proposal increasing the production by around 500,000 barrels per day from August and by 2 million barrels from December. However, the OPEC had postponed its planned summit on Thursday by a day after the United Arab Emirates raised objections to their proposals. And meanwhile, the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that 130 countries, including China, India and Switzerland, have agreed to support the Biden administration's 15% global minimum corporate tax policy. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development said in a separate note also that the plan would help show up an additional $150 billion in tax revenue annually. Now let us look at some newsmakers. The shares of the Chinese ride-hailing company DiDi Global Inc. jumped more than 15% at the market close, taking its valuation to around $78.62 billion a day after its debut on the New York Stock Exchange Wednesday. And semiconductor maker Micron Technology stock dropped 5.35% a day after announcing its quarterly earnings report. The company said it plans to sell its Leahy and Utah facilities to Texas Instruments. In other technology stocks, Nvidia Corp rose 1.21%. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Co. shed 1.59% and ASML Holdings NV shed 1.69%. Accenture plc advanced 1.62%. In the financial stocks, Berkshire Hathaway Inc. rose 0.74%, JP Chase & Co. gained 0.93% and MasterCard gained 1.52%, while PayPal fell 1.39%. Stocks of utility companies NextEra Energy Inc. rose 1.09%, Duke Energy Corp gained 0.77%, and the Southern Co. rose 1.55%. Dominion Energy stock advanced 0.67%. In the energy sector, Chevron Corporation gained 1.36%, PetroChina Company Limited rose 3.37%, Royal Dutch Shell plc increased by 2.44%, while Enbridge Inc. advanced 0.81%, and China Petroleum and Chemical Corporation advanced 2.43%. Now let's move on to the futures and commodities. Gold futures were up 0.32%, silver slightly decreased 0.06%, while copper fell 1.11%. Brent oil remains flat at US $75.57 per barrel, and WTI crude increased 2.03% to US $74.96. Looking at the bond market, the 30-year Treasury bond yields were down 0.17%, while the 10-year bond yields increased 1.07%. The US dollar futures index rose 0.12% to $92.545. And that was a snapshot of the US market overnight. And now it's time for a short break, and we'll take you through the UK stock markets right after this.
This is Andy Liu broadcasting from 𝐊𝐚𝐥𝐤 Media Studio in Australia, and I'll be hosting the new 𝐊𝐚𝐥𝐤 Wellness Show. The half-hour show will cover topics from how wellness as a concept has become even more significant during COVID, to how becoming vegan may improve your health, and much more. We are excited to showcase our live streaming show to our audience of millions overseas and in Australia. Tune in to 𝐊𝐚𝐥𝐤 TV and join me.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Sage on 𝐊𝐴𝐼𝐿 TV, and we're live from the Sydney studios, and this is the Global Markets Roundup show. We're just about to take a look through the European and the UK markets. Well, the European shares ended higher on Thursday as a rally in the crude oil prices saw the energy stocks surge more than 2%, while strong earnings reports helped dispel some concerns over the infectious Delta variant of the coronavirus. And the Pan-European Stock 600 closed 0.6% higher at 455.63 points, with energy stocks marking their best day in 1 month. And moving on now to the markets in the United Kingdom. The London markets traded in a green zone after well-received corporate updates coming from heavyweight companies. Moreover, the IHS Market Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index had dipped to 63.9 during June 2021, while it was a record 65.6 in May of 2021. And let us now look at some newsmakers. JD Sports fashion shares surged by about 5.18% after it remained on track to deliver annual profits of at least £550 million. And moreover, the company had decided to pay back government furlough support. The FTSE 100 listed Associated British Foods stated that it had expected annual profits to remain in line with the prior year, boosted by the encouraging business performance of Primark stores during the third quarter. And moreover, the shares went up by approximately 3.70%. AO World shares dropped by around 3.08% even after the company had reported outstanding growth in top-line profit and bottom-line profitability during the financial year 21, driven by a boom in online sales. Micro Focus International shares plunged by around 13.51% after the company had reported a significant drop in revenue and profitability during the 6 months period ended on 30th April 2021. And moving on again to the Asian markets. Let us now zoom our lens on the city of Tokyo. The Japanese shares closed lower on Thursday, weighed down by worries that a resurgence of COVID-19 infections would lead to an extension of restrictions and slow the economic recovery. The Nikkei share average fell 0.29%, while the broader Topix slipped 0.22%. And moving on now to the next markets, Shanghai. China shares were subdued on Thursday, largely giving up early losses as gains in real estate firms and banks helped offset declines in the industrial firms after weak factory data. And at the close, the Shanghai Composite Index was down 0.07%, while the blue chip CSI 300 Index was up 0.11% after falling as much as 0.62% earlier. And finally, let's now take a look at the last plays in the Asian markets. The South Korean shares ended lower on Thursday as well, pressured by worries about the spread of COVID-19's Delta variant and the strengthening of the US dollar ahead of the closely watched US jobs report on Friday. The won weakened while the benchmark bond yield also fell. The Kospi closed down 14.62 points or 0.44%. So these were the European and Asian market updates. It is time for a short break, and after the break we'll take a look at the markets a little closer to home.
Tune in to get the latest information.
Whether it's about market movements or the currency graph,
Sectoral coverage or industry news.
we cover it all on our news segments.
Be on top of the latest news
With 𝐊𝐴𝐼𝐿 TV.
Welcome back. You're watching Sage on 𝐾ALKINE TV live from Sydney, and this is the Global Markets Roundup show. And after we have discussed the US and UK as well as the Asian markets, let's now take a look at the Australian share market. On Friday, the Australian benchmark index, the ASX 200, is likely to stay on the higher side in the morning trade on the back of a green trading session on Wall Street led by the upbeat economic data. And on Thursday, the ASX 200 had a weak session, closing 0.65% lower at 7,265.6. The Australian and New Zealand dollars traded near support zones on Thursday as their US counterpart ticked up, and the Aussie dollar eased to US 0.7491, having slipped 0.2% on Thursday. And on the other hand, the Kiwi dollar last traded at US $0.6989 after topping out at US 0.7006 earlier in the session. And finally, as the markets have opened, let us now look at the shares that are likely to stay in focus today. The Australian technology space is likely to have a green trading session as US tech stocks participated in lifting the indices higher. Shares such as Afterpay, BrainChip Holdings and Zipco could trade higher today. And the energy shares such as Woodside Petroleum, Viva Energy Group and Santos could provide investors with good opportunities in today's session. And gold miners such as St Barbara, Northern Star Resources and De Grey Mining could catch up with the rising gold prices. And the local miners such as Rio Tinto, BHP Group and Fortescue Metals Group could be under pressure for the day. Thanks for joining us on that report, and that is all for now. Stay tuned with 𝐾ALKINE TV, however. We have more of the live market updates coming for you soon, and we'll be back with more news on the markets, economies, and Holly Shields will be here with the opening bell very soon.